Today we're talking about the RunVenture 3 from Topo Athletic. Overall, a light, all-purpose trail shoe, but, well, there's a lot to talk about. So first, a few basics. The shoe is about 9.2 ounces. In fact, one of them weighs 9.1 and the other weighs just over 9.3. Like a lot of Topo Athletic shoes, this is a zero drop shoe, so a very level, connected feeling when you run, and it has their signature funny shape. So as far as sizing goes, one of them felt the right size and then one of them felt a half size too big. On my first few runs, I figured I just didn't have the laces right, so I kept fiddling with them, but I could never get it to fit correctly. This one always felt a little too big, so I checked the tags, on the tongues, and no, they're both 9.5. And then I weighed them, and it turns out this one weighs a quarter ounce, a full quarter ounce, more than this other one. It's hard to tell when you just hold them up like this. You can't really tell the difference, at least not really. But when one of them weighs a quarter ounce more, it is clearly bigger, and it's the one that feels bigger. So maybe I just got a bad batch, but that's a thing that shouldn't happen. You can't talk about Topo Athletic shoes without mentioning their shape, and I'm not a fan. This is kind of a ridiculous shape. Supposedly the shape of the shoe is meant to match the natural shape of a human's foot, but I don't know any humans whose forefoot is twice as wide as the rest of their foot. The toe box is so wide when you have these shoes on, you can't touch any of the edges of the toe box, not even if you tried. Some people might find that comfortable, but the reality is that means you have to cinch down the laces tighter than you normally would, or else you're going to be sliding all over the place inside the shoe. So it's not a good fit. Even people who like wide toe boxes might find this is a little too much. As far as fit is concerned, on the plus side, the arches are supportive enough. 80% of the time, I feel like they're not, and I don't even have high arches. So now let's talk about the biggest problem of this shoe, and that would be the upper's material. Normally, a shoe's upper is made out of some kind of meshy, breathable material, almost like a running shirt. This is made out of a material more like this. And what am I holding? A rain jacket. As a result, these are the least breathable running shoes I've ever worn. So you might be thinking, oh, so they're waterproof. No, they're not. A test in the sink confirmed that they are not. And if you go on RunVenture's website, it doesn't even market them as water resistant and instead claims that they're breathable. It's hard to understand what they were thinking when they chose this material instead of just a standard mesh. Because the material is pretty stiff, running in these feels like trying to fold a laminated piece of cardstock. If you live in a warm, humid place like I do, you won't want to use these shoes for at least half the year. Whether it's a downpour or a stream crossing or just a lot of sweat, every shoe is going to get wet after a while. Trying to keep water out is a futile effort. Instead, try to let water escape by drying quickly. Use a meshy, breathable material. They still get wet if you run in the rain, or if you just run on a warm day, they'll get just as wet because of your own sweat. And because of the material, they take days to dry out. And that's if you leave them outside in warm April weather. Aside from the material, the design of the upper is good. They didn't overdo it with the overlays. So if this material was breathable, this would be a really breathable shoe, and there's just enough to give the shoe support. But fortunately, there's some good things to talk about. I really like the outsole. The tread pattern works well on just about any terrain. I've used it on loose gravel, dirt, wood chips, grass, and it even runs really well on pavement, which is sort of surprising. Topo opted to use a Vibram outsole for the RunVenture 3, Vibram being a famously tough, durable rubber, and it feels surprisingly good on pavement. Normally, an outsole like this would feel like tank treads on pavement, but this one feels pretty good. So if you do a lot of door-to-trail running, like I do, this is a great shoe for that. And likewise, probably the most surprising plus to this shoe is the quality of the ride. On all terrains, it feels good, both on pavement and all off-road terrains. And despite being a pretty light shoe, it feels more cushioned than it deserves to feel in its weight class. It doesn't have a lot of cushion. As you can see, the stack height is pretty low, so there's not a lot of room to shove a lot of foam between you and the ground. And yet, it feels pretty good. You don't feel the ground too much. It's also more flexible than you would expect for a somewhat rugged trail runner. So it's not too stiff. You can still do what you want to do. The shoe doesn't get in the way. The only drawback is rock protection. Supposedly this shoe does have a rock plate, but that's not much of a rock plate if it's this flexible. And as a result, when you're running on rocky terrain, sometimes you can feel a little poke here and there. I'm not sure how you could improve it without sacrificing some of the flexibility and ride quality, so if that's the trade-off, I'll take it. Just keep your eyes down a little bit when you're running over the rocks. And finally, in the looks department, I like it. This is a good looking shoe. It's mostly one color, just black with blue trim. In fact, it reminds me a lot of the last trail runner I've been using. Trail runners seem to always look pretty good because they know how to stick to just one or two colors, and they don't commit the cardinal sin, white outsoles. They've caught on to this crazy idea that the bottom of your shoe touches the ground and gets dirty, so using white there is the dumbest color to use. I'm not a fan of this shoe, but there are things it does well, and in every bad shoe, there's a good shoe trying to claw its way out. This shoe could go from a D+ to an A- if they only changed a few things. Biggest and most important, change the uppers material, make it more breathable, and make it less stiff and non-compliant. Second, I alone won't convince Topo to change the signature shape, but goodness gracious, that's a little much. As I mentioned before, my two shoes weighed significantly different amounts and had a different fit to them. Maybe I just got a bad batch. And finally, try to add a little more rock protection, but don't change anything if it would mean sacrificing the overall ride quality and feel of the shoe, because that's what's being done right. So who is this shoe for? Well, if you really, really like wide toe boxes and you live somewhere cold and don't mind a non-breathable shoe, you might like this a lot. It does achieve its goal of being a light, quick, all-purpose trail shoe, and that's always good to have around. With a few changes, the next iteration of the Runventure could really be something.